was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did grace appear the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. Like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me. You probably don't have it, right? The Lord has promised good. The Lord has promised good to me. His word, my hope secures. His word, my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be. As long as life endures, my chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy and His love, amazing grace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow. Okay, turn it off. It's the wrong words. Use the sun for there to shine. But God who calls me here below will be forever mine. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace, unending love, amazing grace. I'll have to give you those words so you can put that on there. There's nothing more powerful
That's true.
than the grace of God.
That's right.
So at your name. At your name, the mountains shake and crumble. At your name, the oceans roar and tumble. At your name, angels will bow, the earth will rejoice. Your people cry out. The lost are saved, find their way at the sound of your great name. All content, feel no shame at the sound of your great name. Every fear has no place at the sound of your great name. The enemy, he has to leave at the sound of your great name. Yeshua, worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. Son of God and man, you are high and lifted up. All the world will praise your great name. All the weak find their strength at the sound of your great name. Hungry souls receive grace at the sound of your great name. The sick are healed, the dead are woke. Father, let's find their rest at the sound. I speak to life of your great name. Now the sick are healed. The sick are healed. We want to be healed, right? Yes. The dead are raised at the sound of your great name. Yeshua, worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. Son of God and man, you are high and lifted up. All the world will praise your great name. Yeshua, worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. Son of God and man, you are high and lifted up. All the world will praise your great name. Redeemer, Redeemer, my healer, Lord Almighty, my Savior, defender, you are my King. Redeemer, my healer, Lord Almighty, my Savior, defender, you are my King. Yeshua, worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. Son of God and man, you are high and lifted up. All the world will praise your great name. Your great name. Your great name. I'm going to do one more. You are God of the heavens. It's called You Are God, and it's an old one from 1997. Like, that's really that old, not, but
It is. It's quite
it
hard.
is for, you know, it's
But, yeah,
11 years old, right?
1977.
No, it's more than that.
1997 to 2018. Yeah, we got a few years on it. And I do it different.
Oh, I didn't know this song.
You are God of the will seek you with all of my days, and I will follow your ways, and I will give you all my worship. I will give you all my praise. You alone I long to worship. You alone are worthy of my praise. I will give you all my worship. I will give you all my praise. You alone I long to worship. You alone are worthy of my praise. And I will bow down and hail you as King, and I will serve you. I'll give you everything, and I will lift up my eyes to your throne, and I will trust you. I will trust you alone. I will give you all my worship. I will give you all my praise. You alone I long to worship. You alone are worthy of my praise. I will give you all my worship. I will give you all my praise. You alone I long to worship. You alone are worthy of my praise. I will give you all my worship. I will give you all my praise. You alone I long to worship. You alone are worthy of my praise. Abba Father, we come into this house to worship you, to honor Yeshua, our Mashiach, our Messiah, the one who has come to earth for us. We come here to honor you. We come here to glorify you. We come here to hear from you. That your spirit may be in us, that your spirit may dwell in us in a new way, that we may be filled more and more and more with your spirit, with your word, with your truth. Father, it is about you and your Messiah. And I thank you. And I ask that in today as we gather here, today as we honor you, today as we listen to your word, today as we pray before you, that you will receive the glory. You will receive the honor. And you will be glorified. And we will be built up in your most holy name. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, our Lord, our Savior. So we stand for the Shema. Yes.
Oh, you have one?
Yeah, she had a transport over. She'll be back this evening.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments and has instructed us to hear the voice of the shofar. Shema Yisrael,
Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Vayel. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'kol levavecha u'kol nafshecha u'kol meodecha. Hayu havarim ha'ele asher enoki mitzvahcha hayom al levavecha. Vishinantam levaneka v'dibarta bam v'shivtka v'fereka uvlekteka v'derek v'shaktam v'umeka v'tavtam elad ayadeka v'tafot mineka v'chatam layod v'teka u'visharecha.
Hear
Hear Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be in your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be for frontlets between your eyes.
And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house
And on your gates, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishayim mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'chiyot l'goyim v'na'amanu Yeshua HaMashiach or ha'olam. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to be a light unto the nations, and has given us Yeshua the Messiah, the light of the world. And now, Father, in this season, as there are lights shining every night, Lord, last night we had the brightest moon. The most beautiful, bright, full moon with the equinox. And Lord, that's an unusual event, and I thank you that has occurred and that we see it. And I ask, Father, that we would see what it is you have to say to us in this event and in all that's going on around us. Father, I thank you that you are a good God and that you have provided for us. And I ask that you would continue to provide in this congregation. I thank you for the miraculous provision that you have made here. And I thank you that you will continue to do that. I ask, Lord God, for continued healing for Joy. Lord, I ask that you would continue to bring her into a place of full health. Lord, we pray for David, and we thank you that when he is here today, we pray that David would continue to heal, that he would get better, Lord, that he would be strengthened. Strengthened. And Father, as I spoke with Leah this week and the stuff that's been going on in her family and her body and the illnesses that she deals with and the fight that she has just to get out of bed in the morning sometimes. And then, Father, I pray for her, for healing for her, for strength for her and her family. And I also pray for Sue, Lord, the one that she went to be with this week, who's had cancer and that they're doing the surgeries on. And Lord, there's just so much that's been happening. And Father, Leanne specifically asked that we would pray that this woman, Sue, would be open to hearing about Yeshua as her Messiah. That she would be open to recognizing Jesus as the way, the truth, and the life. Not just a way, but the way. Father, that you would open that door into this woman's heart, to this woman's life, even as she comes from a very different background, and yet, Father, you have sent Leanne and her mom there to speak to her. So I ask that you would open that door. Open her heart to you, Lord. And where the doctors say there is no hope, we know that you are the hope. You are the hope. And we stand in that. Lord, I thank you for that. And I thank you for continued healing for many. And I thank you for Chris, even as she's traveling. I ask that you would give her strength and give her wisdom and give her peace. And Father, as she comes back, that you would keep the roads clear for her. Father, I thank you that you work with us and that you are with us. And I ask that you would be glorified today, even among us again. Help us to see you and who you are. And Lord, I'm asking one more thing. In this season where families expect and families want, and it's supposed to be, Lord, the meme says it's all about Christ, and yet we've made it about all these other things. And Lord, it's the celebration of Christmas, and so many people have made it about so many different things. They bring their expectations, and they bring them, and they put them upon themselves, and they put it upon us. And I ask for peace in these expectations. Not just that, but your wisdom as to what we should do, who we should see, how we should mix with them, and what we should say. That we may be one before you, Lord, not fighting and bickering over details and issues, but that we may love you, and yet we may know what it is you would have us to do, you would have our voice be for those around us. Thank you, Lord. Are there any other requests that need to be made that I don't know about? Just go ahead and pray and pray it out loud enough that we can hear you, and we'll all agree with you.
I think all of us have loved ones, relatives, and friends who, like you were praying for that gal, don't know the Lord.
Pray for it.
Or don't know him very well. Or
Don't announce it, pray.
Oh, wow.
Pray. Yes, and we'll join you.
Okay, thank you, Lord. We lift up our children and our grandchildren
Yes.
and our extended families. Lord, you said not to turn aside from our own flesh. In Isaiah 58, to keep the Sabbath, but before that, you said not to turn away from our own flesh. So we pray for the people who share our needs. And Lord, we also pray for our friends, for our acquaintances, Lord, that you've written the book of our lives, and at the judgment seat of Yeshua, we will be rewarded for what we've done and have losses for what we haven't done. So Lord, we pray that we walk your paths. Your anointed and your eternal paths, and also the paths that you have for our individual lives too. And that we can support one another to do that. Yeshua.
And I just remember, Lord, I lift up to you, Leo and Myla. Has been a roller coaster for them, having a baby and also cleaning and preparing and modeling the house of their mom. And then they have to drive on the 23rd, come back with their mom, come back on the 24th. And please, Lord, pave the way and protect them, any harmful in the way, and pick them up, to pick their moms up and come back here, take them back here in home and safe and sound, and with the baby. And also that they, Myla
Jesus, Messiah. You're the name above all names. You're my blessed Redeemer. You're my Emmanuel. You're the rescue of sinners. You are the ransom from heaven. You are Jesus Messiah. You are Lord of all. He is Lord. He is Lord. He is risen from the dead. He is Lord. Every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. He is Lord. He is Lord. He is risen from the dead. He is Lord. Every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Someone said something to me yesterday that makes so much wonderful sense, during this season where the world is celebrating what they think is the birth of Yeshua. And so many messianics have come out so against all that, and yet if you think about it, from about halfway through November until the end of this week, if you talk about Jesus, everybody's okay with it. You just got to talk about it from his birth, and then you can go from there.
Yep.
And it's okay, and the doors are open to us to walk in a grocery store and sing Silent Night. Along with it, we have an open heaven in a sense, an open door to speak about our Messiah, to speak about him who is God of all the universe, and to let people know that he loves them, and to go from there to introduce them to the fact that God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Yeshua is that seed. Let's do Lord God of Abraham. Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. to do today is do the readings and just go ahead and come when it's your turn, okay? So I don't know,
How do we know when it's our turn?
the order it's written in.
Well, but I didn't see that. Somebody gave this to me, so,
Okay, I'll call you up.
all right.
I'll call you up,
All
how's
y'all,
that?
call us
We're gonna
up.
start with Craig reading, and the reading today is out of Vayechi. It's out of, it's the very last reading in the book of Genesis.
Ooh.
We will be concluding Genesis today, and beginning Exodus next week. Just kind of an interesting concept. So Genesis, we're going to begin with Genesis 48 verse 28, and he's going to read through 48 verse 20. Vihi, it means he lived, and I'll explain that in a little bit. Go ahead, Craig, would you
That's
come in?
47 through 28.
47,
28.
yeah, sorry. Genesis 47 verse 28 through 48 verse 20. And I had this open to the wrong, yeah.
Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, so the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time for Israel to die drew near, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "Please, if I have found favor in your sight, place now your hand under my thigh and deal with me in kindness and faithfulness. Please do not bury me in Egypt. But when I lie down with my fathers, you shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." And he said, "I will do as you have said." He said, "Swear to me." So he swore to him. Then Israel bowed in worship at the head of the bed. Now it came about after these things that Joseph was told, "Behold, your father is sick." So he took his two sons Manasseh and Ephraim with him. When it was told to Jacob, "Behold, your son Joseph has come to you," Israel collected his strength and sat up in the bed. Then Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. And he said to me, 'Behold, I will make you fruitful and numerous, and I will make you a company of peoples, and I will give this land to your descendants after you for an everlasting possession.' Now your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. But your offspring that have been born after them shall be yours. They shall be called by their names of their brothers in their inheritance. Now as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died to my sorrow in the land of Canaan on the journey when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath. And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, 'Who are these?' Joseph said to his father, 'These are my sons, whom God has given me here.' So he said, 'Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them.' Now the eyes of Israel were so dim from age that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them close to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. Israel said to Joseph, 'I never expected to see your face, and behold, God has let me see your children as well.' Then Joseph took them from his knees and bowed with his face to the ground. Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right, and brought them close to him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and on his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands, although Manasseh was the firstborn. He blessed Joseph and said, 'The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and may my name live on in them, and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth.' When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on Ephraim's head, it displeased him, and he grasped his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, 'Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head.' But his father refused and said, 'I know, son, I know. He also will become a people, and also will be great. However, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. He blessed them that day, saying, By you Israel will pronounce blessing, saying, May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh.
Now Helena's going to come and read Genesis 49, 1 through 28, the blessings that Yaakov reads over his sons.
Then Jacob summoned his sons and said, Assemble yourselves that I may tell you what will befall you in the days to come. Gather together and hear, O sons of Jacob. And listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Uncontrolled as water, you shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed. Then you defiled it. You went up to my couch. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are implements of violence. Let my soul not enter into your counsel. Let not my glory be united with their assembly. Because in their anger they slew men, and in their self-will they lamed oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will disperse them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He couches, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion who dares rouse him up. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. He ties his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washes his garments in wine, and his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are dull from wine, and his teeth white from milk. Zebulun will dwell at the seashore, and he shall be a haven for ships, and his flank shall be toward Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey, lying down between the sheepfolds. When he saw that the resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant, he bowed his shoulder to bear burdens, and became a slave at forced labor. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a horned snake in the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that his rider falls backward. For your salvation I wait, O Lord. As for Gad, raiders shall raid him, but he will raid at their heels. As for Asher, his food shall be rich, and he will yield royal dainties. Naphtali is a doe let loose. He gives beautiful words. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. Its branches ran over a wall. The archers bitterly attacked him, and shot at him and harassed him. But his bow remained firm, and his arms were agile, from the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. From the God of your father who helps you, and by the Almighty who blesses you, with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breast of the womb. The blessings of your father have surpassed the blessings of my ancestors, up to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of the one distinguished among his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, and in the evening he divides the spoil.
All of these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them when he blessed them. He blessed them, everyone, with a blessing appropriate to him.
Now chapter 49, verse 29 through 50, verse 13, Janie will read this.
Then he charged them and said to them, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought along with the field from Ephron the Hittite for a burial site. There they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. There they buried Isaac and his wife Rebekah, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it purchased from the sons of Heth. When Jacob finished charging his sons, he drew his feet into the bed and breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. Now 40 days were required for it, for such is the period required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. When the days of mourning for him were past, Joseph spoke to the house of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found favor in your sight, please speak to Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, Behold, I am about to die. In my grave which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore, please let me go up and bury my father, then I will return. Pharaoh said, Go up and bury your father as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt. And all the household of Joseph and his brothers and his father's household, they left only their little ones and their flocks and their herds in the land of Goshen. There also went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they lamented there with a very great and sorrowful lamentation, and he observed 7 days mourning for his father. Now when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning at the threshing floor, they said, This is a grievous mourning for the Egyptians. Therefore it was named Abel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan. Thus his sons did for him as he had charged them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham had bought, along with the field for a burial site from Ephron the Hittite.
Joy, would you come and read Genesis 50, verses 14 through 26, which concludes the book of Genesis, Bereshit.
I get you.
My foot covering.
The
Head
hitchhiker.
covering, foot covering.
Yes, It's okay.
And his brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we be thy servants. And
Go
Joseph,
back to,
oops. Oh. Okay, your dad's Bible has these little annotations, and that's in 14, so you're right.
go back to 14, please.
Okay, and Joseph returned unto Egypt, he and his brethren, and all that went up with him to bury his father after he had buried his father. And when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, they said, Joseph will peradventure hate us, and will certainly requite us all the evil which we did unto him. And they sent a messenger unto Joseph, saying, Thy father did command before he died, saying, So shall ye say unto Joseph, Forgive, I pray thee now, the trespass of thy brethren and their sin, for they did unto thee evil. And now we pray thee, forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of thy father. And Joseph wept when they spake unto him. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we be thy servants. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now therefore fear ye not. I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spake kindly unto them. And Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house. And Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation, and the children also of Machir the son of Manasseh were brought up on Joseph's knees. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, and God will surely visit you, and bring you out of this land unto the land which he sware to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence.
So Joseph died at the age of 110, and they embalmed him and they put him in a coffin in Egypt. And at the very end of Genesis it says, Hazak, Hazak, Vini, Hazak. I know you don't have that in your Bibles, but I have that in mine. Hazak, Hazak, Vini, Hazak means be strong, and let us be strengthened as we read the word of the Lord. Let's continue to read in 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Janie, can you read for us, please?
As David's time to die drew near, he charged Solomon his son, saying, I am going the way of all the earth. Be strong, therefore, and show yourself a man. Keep the charge of the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes, his commandments, his ordinances, and his testimonies, according to what is written in the law of Moses, that you may succeed in all that you do, and wherever you turn, so that the Lord may carry out his promise which he spoke concerning me, saying, If your sons are careful of their way, to walk before me in truth with all their heart and with all their soul, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. Now you also know what Joab the son of Zeruiah did to me, what he did to the two commanders of the armies of Israel, to Abner the son of Ner, and to Amasa the son of Jether, whom he killed. He also shed the blood of war in peace, and he put the blood of war on his belt about his waist, and on his sandals on his feet. So act according to your wisdom, and do not let his gray hair go down to Sheol in peace, but show kindness to the sons of Barzillai, the Gileadite, and let them be among those who eat at your table, for they assisted me when I fled from Absalom your brother. Behold, there is with you Shimei the son of Gera, the Benjamite, of Bahurim. Now it was he who cursed me with a violent curse on the day I went to Mahanaim. But when he came down to me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, saying, I will not put you to death with the sword. Now, therefore, do not let him go unpunished, for you are a wise man, and you will know what you ought to do to him, and you will bring his gray hair down to Sheol with blood. Then David slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. The days that David reigned over Israel were 40 years. 7 years he reigned in Hebron, and 33 years he reigned in Jerusalem. And Solomon sat on the throne of David his father, and his kingdom was firmly established.
Bob is going to come and read out of the extra HAFTARAH portion, the one that I read by mistake at the beginning of the week, and I went, you know what, this is so appropriate to still what we're saying today. And it's out of 2 Kings. It's the same verses, chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. So 2 Kings, chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. It's an extra portion out of the prophets for us today.
came about when the Lord was about to take up Elijah by a whirlwind to heaven, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elijah said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. Then the sons of the prophets who were at Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that the Lord will take away your master from over you today?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Be still." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The sons of the prophets who were at Jericho approached Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that the Lord will take
Go to verse 7.
let's see, do you know that the Lord will take away your master from over you today?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be still." Then Elijah said to him, "Please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." And he said, "As the Lord lives and you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. Now 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood opposite them at a distance, while the two of them stood by the Jordan. Elijah took his mantle and folded it together and struck the waters, and then they were divided here and there, so that the two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed over, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you." And Elijah said, "Please let a double portion of your spirit be upon me." He said, "You have asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken from you, it shall be so for you, but if not, it shall not be so." As they were going along and talking, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, which separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven. Elijah saw it and cried out, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." And he saw Elijah no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two pieces.
out of John 13, Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 1 to 19.
Now before the feast of the Passover, Jesus, knowing that his hour had come, that he would depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray him. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things unto his hand, and that he had come forth from God and was going back to God, got up from supper and laid aside his garment, and taking a towel and girded himself. Then he poured out water unto the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel with which he was girded. So he came to Simon Peter. He said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Jesus answered and said to him, what I do you do not realize now, but you will understand hereafter. Peter said to him, never shall you wash my feet. Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, then wash not only my feet, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, he who has bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean as you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew that the one who was betraying him, for this reason he said, not all of you are clean. So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and reclined at the table again, he said to them, do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, the Lord and the teacher, wash your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I give you an example that you should also do as I did to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a slave is no greater than his master, nor is one who is sent greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. I do not speak of all of you. I know the ones I have chosen, but it is that the scriptures may be fulfilled. He who eats my bread has lifted up his heel against me. From now on, I am telling you before it comes to pass that when it does occur, you may believe that I am he.
So the reading is called Vayechi, and it means he lived. Yet as we read, there's not a lot of living going on, but there is a lot of dying going on. Did you catch that?
that yes, he lived, but we all live, we will all die. It's a sad reality. It's a sad truth. If you have a doctor look at you and say, you're going to die, you can look at him honestly and say, and so will you. You know? Our only hope of getting out of this world is through the coming of Yeshua or through death. We're all going to die. This reading talks about what each of these people did, what each of them, how they prepared for their death. Because you see, that's something we should all be preparing for. I look around the room and I don't see a lot of little kids here, okay? We don't think about preparing little children having to prepare for death, but I do see some of us are a little older. I'm not as young as people think I am. And I know that the day is coming. Just yesterday on Facebook, I saw a friend post a message to her stepson that said, I am so sorry. And I went, oh, what's she sorry for John about? So I went to the stepson's page. Now, Jonathan and Carolyn were little kids when I went to college and when Craig and I were young marrieds in California. And their mother's name was Kathy. And their dad's a good friend of ours, still John. And but Kathy and John got divorced several years ago. Well, Kathy and I were very, very good friends for a very long season. And then things kind of shifted and changed. And you know how that happens? We have friends that are for seasons and friends that are for life and friends that are, right? I mean, that's just reality. Okay? She was a friend of mine and a good friend for a good season. She died. She's younger than I am. I went, what? Kathy died? Are you kidding me? I hadn't even been able to write her that letter that I've got, sitting in my brain going, hey, I remember you, I want you to know I care about you still, whatever, because John, the connection just never got remade. She died. Like, whoa, what's that? My dad's joke for years was he would read the obituary to know whether or not he had to get up to go to work. Because if his name was in the obituary, he wouldn't need to go. Until the day he read his name in the obituary. A Wesley Darby, a Baptist pastor in Phoenix. And my dad's going, what? Oh, that's the other Wesley Darby, the black Baptist preacher from the other side of town.
Oh my goodness.
And they had met, they had talked to each other before, but it's that kind of an idea, your name in the obituary, you what? But the reality is we are all going to die. It's not a fun reality. It's not the best reality, but it's reality. And the question is, have you prepared? What preparations have you made? What do you want to be remembered for? And are you doing what you need to be doing now so that that is what you are remembered for? Or are you doing something else and hoping that that'll be done and gone before you die so that you're not remembered for that? The news this week out of Doris. I don't know if any of you saw it. There was a couple in a trailer out in a field, kind of out in the outskirts of the Doris area, just a little south of us, that a neighbor found dead in their trailer and called in the police, of course, because I didn't kill him, right? But you know what the number one thing is that's talked about in their death? It isn't how they died. They died of carbon monoxide poisoning. That took 3 or 4 days before that was revealed. Their names, it took 3 or 4 days before their names were revealed, even though it said that they had ID on them. They had their identification there in the trailer, but they didn't get ID positively. Family. You know what the number one thing was listed in every single article I saw about it?
No.
There was an illegal marijuana grow on their property.
Oh my God.
Every single article I saw about this couple, the couple in the trailer by the illegal marijuana grow, by the illegal marijuana grow. That poor couple, they died of carbon monoxide poisoning trying to stay warm. But everything in every article, everything mentioning them talked about the fact that there was an illegal marijuana grow on the property they were living on. And I thought, I certainly don't want to be remembered for something like that. That's not going to happen on our property, but it made me stop and think.
Yeah.
What are we remembered for? What's going to be put on your tombstone, right? I told you I was sick. All the jokes that can be made about that, but there is a very real idea of what are we doing to prepare? Jacob brought in Joseph's sons and blessed them because Jacob thought he was dying. But then he had more time. That was almost presumptuous on his part. There was more time. When it really did finally come to the point that he knew he was really going to die, he called all of his sons, not just Joseph and his two, but all of his sons, so that he could leave a message for them. And one of the things that he wanted them instructed in was he did not want to be buried in Egypt. He did not want to be remembered as the patriarch that got buried in Egypt. He wanted to be buried in the promised land. In the promised land. Why? Because he wanted to be there when the Messiah came. He wanted to be there, he wanted to be ready. Mashiach is coming. Messiah is coming. Why else would he care where he's buried? He wanted to be buried in the land of promise. It didn't even belong to them yet. It wasn't the Jewish nation yet. The nation was not yet established. They were sojourners. But in faith, Abraham had purchased a cave. And Abraham had himself and Sarah buried in that cave. In faith, this land you promised us will be ours and our descendants. And this is where I want to be buried. This is where I want to be. Isaac was buried there. Now Jacob's turn. And he says, I want to be buried in the promised land. Promise me you will take me and bury me there. What did he want to be remembered for? As a man of faith. As a man who was a prophet, and he saw these things on his children, and he wanted them to know who they are before God. And so he told them. He told them who they were before God. Then we have Joseph dying, and what does Joseph say? Don't leave me in Egypt. Joseph couldn't stay in the promised land. When they went to bury his father, it says Joseph returned to Egypt. Why did they return to Egypt? There was no more famine, right? There was no more famine. Joseph didn't have permission to leave Egypt and stay gone. He had to get permission from Pharaoh before he left to bury his father. Joseph, although he was second highest in command, was still a slave and a servant to Pharaoh. And he and the rest of his family came back and stayed in Egypt until God said it was time to leave. But he made them promise, don't leave my body here. They didn't bury him then, did they? They didn't take Joseph to the promised land like they did Jacob. They did not take him to the promised land then. But later, we'll find in the book of Exodus, when Moses gathers them all together and they begin to leave Egypt, it says that they took the bones of Joseph with them. He had requested it, they remembered it. We don't know where any of the other tribes were buried. We don't know where any of the other patriarchs there were buried. We don't know where Dan is buried. Probably somewhere in Egypt. We don't know where Benjamin was buried. We don't know that. But we know where Jacob is buried. And we know where Joseph was taken to as well, because they took his bones to the same place. Joseph's tomb is in Israel. He wanted to be remembered as a man of faith, a man who believed. He believed firmly that God was going to take them back to the promised land. So he ordered, don't leave my bones in Egypt. Take me with you when you go. David, as he prepares to die, pulls his son Shlomo, pulls Solomon in and says, okay, be strong. And I love this verse. This is my favorite verse out of the whole passage. Where he says, I'm going the way of all the earth. Therefore be strong. Show yourself a man. Observe the charge of Adonai your God, to go in his ways, keep his regulations, mitzvot, rulings, and instructions, in accordance with what is written in the Torah of Moshe, so that you will succeed in all you do wherever you go. If you do, Adonai will fulfill what he promised. When he said, if your children pay attention to how they live, conducting themselves before me honestly with all their heart and being, you will never lack a man on the throne of Israel. The promise, the prophetic word. Solomon, be strong. Do what you're supposed to do. Be righteous before God. Do it so that the promise of God can be fulfilled. Not just in you, but in your children and your children's children after you, until such time as Messiah comes. David gave him some other instructions I'm not going to really go into, but the primary instruction was do what God has told you to do. Do it. Be righteous before God. When Yeshua is getting ready to die, he knows he's going to die. What does he do? He washes their feet in an act of instruction. He becomes the servant to them, and he instructs them and he lets them know there's some cleaning that needs to continue. You're clean, but we still need to wash our feet. And then he instructs them a little bit more, and he says, I'm telling you this stuff so that when it happens, you will know who I am still. So what happened after he died? Did they remember that right away? I'm not sure they did. Not sure they remembered right away what he had said or that he had told them all these things. They were too lost in their grief. Our readings the last couple of weeks were the young man walking on the road to Emmaus, and they didn't recognize him. And he opened the scriptures and he told them who he was. From the scriptures, from the Tanakh, from the books of Moses, from the writings of the prophets. They didn't get what he had taught them. They didn't understand it. He wanted them to. He gave them the instructions. He wanted them to get it. Just like Jacob wanted the sons to remember, we have a promise. We have a promised land. We're going to be going there. Bury me there. Joseph, there's a promised land. Take me with you when you go back. David, to his son, says, obey what God has taught us. Obey what God has taught us. Yeshua said, I'm telling you these things so that you will know who I am when these things happen, so you won't forget who I am. Then we read that extra passage, the story of Elijah and Elisha. And Elisha, walking with Elijah, he had been his servant, he had been his student, he had been studying after him. And every place they stopped, someone told him, you know he's going to be taken from you today, right? You know he's going to be taken from you today, right? And he said, I know, and I'm not letting go of him. You know he's going to be taken from you. Yes, I know. See, that's kind of how prophecy's supposed to work. God tells us something, and the prophets reinforce it for us. If you get a prophetic word from someone who is a prophet, and it does not resonate within you of something that God has already told you, put it on a shelf and ask God, if that's the case, if that's from you, Lord, you need to show it to me directly. Because you see, all kinds of prophets say all kinds of things. We have other cases in the books where a prophet gave a word to a young man. Now, God had given him very specific instructions. He was not supposed to stop. He was supposed to go deliver the word and go all the way home and not stop. And yet another prophet came and said, oh, but God said it was okay, you can stop here now. And the guy stops there, and God demands it of him because he didn't obey God. He listened to a man instead of listening directly to God. These guys all come and tell him, yeah, he's going to be taken from you. And he says, I know, I'm not leaving him. And Elisha does this phenomenal thing. He takes his cloak, whips it around, wraps it up, and he smacks the water, and the water parts. Did you know the Jordan River parted more than once? We talk about the Jordan River parting, and we talk about that as they came into Israel with Joshua. We talk about the sea parting when they came through leaving Egypt. Did you know that it parted for Elijah and Elisha? Elijah, with his cloak, parts the water. And they walk across, and the whirlwinds come and take him. And it says Elisha tore his clothes. Why? Because that's a sign of mourning in Israel. He showed appropriate mourning. But then, the part we did not read, says he bent down and he picked up Elijah's cloak and he put it on. And he went back to the river and he took the same cloak and he rolled it up just like Elijah had done. And he whipped it out and he smacked the water with it. And the river parted again. And he went back across. And the prophets that were on the other side waiting for him said, where's Elijah? And he says, God has taken him. He goes, oh, we need to bury him. So they all went back across the river. Now, he didn't part the water for them. They had to go back across the river again. They probably got a little wet. And they all searched for the body, which was not found. In the meantime, Elisha began walking in the power and the authority of the one he had served. When Yeshua washes their feet, it's because he wants them to know they will be walking in his power and in his authority. And if we're going to walk in his power and his authority, then we need to be obedient. Solomon was going to walk in the power and authority of his father David. David said, obey the commands of God. The sons of Israel were going to each have a portion and a part of the authority of their father. And in the words to them, Jacob is saying, remember the promise. The promise. The promise. And here's what it's going to be like. And bury me in the land of promise. Because that will be ours. Walk in my faith.
Walk in my authority. The Apostle Peter, Kepha, in his books, writes instructions to the people of God. And in 1 Peter chapter 1, he writes this. Verse 3, praised be God, Father of our Lord Yeshua the Messiah, who in keeping with his great mercy has caused us through the resurrection of Yeshua the Messiah from the dead to be born again into a living hope. There's a promise. There's a promise. To an inheritance that cannot decay, spoil, or fade, kept safe for you in heaven. Meanwhile, through trusting, you are being protected by God's power for a deliverance ready to be revealed at the last time. Rejoice in this. Even though for a little while you may have to experience grief and various trials. Even gold is tested for genuineness by fire. The purpose of these trials is so that your trust's genuineness, which is far more valuable than gold, will be judged worthy of the praise, glory, and honor at the revealing of Yeshua the Messiah. Without having seen him, you love him. Without seeing him now, but trusting in him, continue to be full of joy that is glorious beyond words. And you are receiving what your trust is aimed at, namely your deliverance. Now, he's not talking about a physical deliverance. Each person he wrote to died. But he is talking about a spiritual deliverance. A deliverance from living in the world. A deliverance from walking in disobedience to God. In verse 13, I pick it up again in 1 Peter chapter 1. Therefore, get your minds ready for work. Keep yourselves under control. Fix your hope fully on the gift you will receive when Yeshua the Messiah is revealed. As people who obey God, do not let yourselves be shaped by the evil desires you used to have when you were still ignorant. On the contrary, following the Holy One who called you, become holy yourselves in your entire way of life. Since the Tanakh, the scriptures say, you are to be holy because I am holy. Do we want to be remembered for our faith? Then we need to walk in it. Do we want to be remembered for the promises God has given us? Then we need to walk in those promises. Not giving up. Even though Joseph had to go back to Egypt, he said, take my bones with you when you go. Get them ready. Get it ready. Because he knew the promise was coming. He knew the promise was coming. Elisha was told that if he saw Elijah be taken up, he would have the authority and the power doubled. So he did what he was told to do. And that's what he got. That's what he received. David told Solomon, this is what you're to do. You are to walk in obedience, and these things that I didn't get to clean up while I was king, clean it up for me. Solomon did. And Solomon is known as one of the greatest kings ever to be on the face of the earth. The wisest man. He ruled a land in peace. And he built the temple in Jerusalem. He followed what his father said. And he was blessed. How do we want to be remembered? How do we want to be remembered? Do we want to walk in the commandments of God? I have a song I'm going to finish with, and we don't have the words for it, I'm sure. Some of you will recognize it, and if you want to sing it with me, you can. It's an old song by Keith Green.
but it's the cry of my heart. Oh Lord, you're beautiful. You can sing it if you know it. Your face is all I see, and when your eyes are on this child, your grace abounds to me. Oh Lord, you're beautiful. Your face is all I see, and when your eyes are on this child, your grace abounds to me. I want to take your word and shine it all around. First help me just to leave it, Lord. And when I'm doing well, help me to never seek a crown, for my reward is giving glory to you. I want to take your word and shine it all around. First help me just to leave it, Lord. And when I'm doing well, help me to never seek a crown. My reward is giving glory to you. Oh Lord, please light the fire that once burned bright and clear. Replace the lamp of my first love that burned with holy fear. Oh Lord, you're beautiful. Your face, it's all I see. And when your eyes are on this child, your grace abounds to me. Abba Father, as we live our lives, as we walk out our lives, help us, Lord, help us to do what you've called us to do. And I know you've called me to shine the light of your world, your word all around, to speak your truth, to bring your word to people who think they know it. I know that's your call on my life, and it's not an easy one, but God, I surrender to that and I submit to that. But before I can do that, Lord, I have to live it too. So give me that strength. Give me that resolve. And Father, I pray for those who are in the hearing of my voice today, whether it's here in this room right now or whether it's someone who watches it later on the video, that we would each seek what is your call on our lives and help us live it. Live it. Replace the fire within us. If it has gotten dim, if it has gotten soft, if it is going out, Lord, help us to relight that fire. Your Spirit has to do that in us. It has to be you, because we don't have any fire or flame of our own. It comes from you. So I ask that your flame, your light would be in each one of us, that we would let that fire be rekindled today as we approach the last 2 weeks of this calendar year, Lord. And that we will seek your face first. And that we will live our lives for you, so that we will be remembered, not for ourselves, but for you. Help us live as followers of your kingdom. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, our King, the one we follow, the one we serve. Amen. You up to listen.
Yivarech Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yonecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace.